You're listening to Himalayan Adventure by Vaile. Chapter 28.
She heard the whispering voices and ignored them. They faded away but later returned, a constant murmur of conversation from a faraway place. Sometimes familiar, sometimes foreign, not important. Reality receded and she slept. Later the voices were louder and she recognized one of them, the Nepalese boy she met some time ago. When was that? The memories teased her, hovering just out of her mind's reach. She concentrated. It was a bus ride on a mountain. Pemba, that was his name, traveling to a distant place called Shabrubesi. That's right, now she remembered. Pemba, the yeti denier. Slowly, her mind reconnected with her body. She became aware of the soft mattress beneath her back and the feathery lightness of a sheet on her arms and legs. She was lying down with a pillow under her head. Then her awareness filled her mind in a rush. Her eyelids fluttered, once, twice. Pemba's voice was beside her. "I think she's waking up," he said. Laheeti and Twig watched Isabelle's sleeping face for signs of consciousness. The yeti doctor standing on the other side of the bed watched her eyelids flutter again. "Yes, I think she is," he replied. Satisfied that his young human patient was regaining consciousness, he walked away to dispose of a syringe, swishing the white curtain around the bed as he left. Isabelle opened her eyes. The sudden brightness caused her to blink quickly. Her vision swirled for a few moments, and when it cleared, she lifted her head and saw Pemba, Laheeti, and Twig standing at the side of the bed. "How are you feeling?" asked Laheeti. She pushed herself up into a sitting position and leaned her back against the wall behind her. "Okay, I think," she said uncertainly. She looked around, noting the stainless steel bed and clean white surroundings. "Am I in hospital?" she asked. "Yes," Laheeti replied, watching her carefully. She nodded. That seemed to make sense. A look of pain briefly crossed her face as she recalled the avalanche on Yala Peak. "Somebody saved us from the crevasse," she said with sudden understanding. She frowned, still feeling confused. "So, are we back in Kathmandu?" No, not exactly," Laheeti stated. Her bed was surrounded by a thin white plastic curtain that afforded her some privacy. Peering through a gap in the curtain, she saw flashes of movement as people walked past. She looked around her bed. Everything looked well maintained. "Well, we can't be in Shabrubesi because this place looks too new," Isabelle observed. "No, it's not Shabrubesi," Laheeti confirmed. "I don't get it," Isabelle said. "If it's not Kathmandu or Shabrubesi, where are we?" Laheeti looked at Pemba with half a smile on his face. Isabelle sat up higher on the bed and waited. Just as Pemba opened his mouth to answer, the yeti doctor walked in and pulled the curtain closed behind him. He stopped next to Isabelle, picked up the medical chart hanging on the bed frame, and scribbled something on the top page. Isabelle stared, her eyes grew wide and the color drained out of her cheeks. The creature continued to write notes on the chart. Isabelle didn't move a muscle. For several seconds, her mind struggled to accept the fact that reality had been sucked out of the room and replaced with the twilight zone. On autopilot, she jerked her head around to Pemba and Laheeti. What she saw confused her even more. Instead of shocked expressions, they were both smiling broadly and watching her intently. Her racing heart began to slow. She looked at the strange creature with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She began to take in the details. A broad face covered with fine white fur and an exotic pattern of dark markings. Black eyebrows and lips and light pink skin on the tip of the nose. Large pale blue eyes under long eyelashes. Clawed, furry hands with 4 fingers and a thumb. It was the face of a white tiger, but redesigned by evolution to be more like a human being. The nose was flatter, the chin was smaller, the cheeks were higher. The creature moved like a human, but was something else entirely. The face was handsome yet totally alien, the gestures foreign but familiar at the same time. The yeti doctor looked up at Isabelle and smiled. She smiled back. Now her initial shock was gone, replaced by a nagging suspicion. She gave Pemba and Laheeti a knowing look. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became. "You're a yeti, aren't you?" she asked quietly. "You got it in one," the doctor replied. He watched her carefully, then said, "You look like you're taking it pretty well. Some people faint when they see a yeti for the first time." Isabelle blurted out the first thing that came into her head. "You can talk." "Yes," the yeti replied. "So can you, it seems." "Yes, but yetis aren't supposed to be able to talk," Isabelle protested. The doctor chuckled and said, "Yetis aren't supposed to be a lot of things. You must have a lot of questions. Pemba will explain everything. For the moment, all I'll say is that 2 days ago you were rescued from a crevasse and brought here to this hospital. Don't worry, you're not injured. You feel groggy because you were asleep for 3 days. I have given you something to help you wake up. Pemba will take care of you while you're here." "Here," repeated Isabelle. "Where exactly is here?" Why, Shangri-La, of course, replied the Yeti doctor. Isabelle frowned, her lips moved soundlessly as she repeated the unfamiliar name. The doctor turned to Pemba and said, Isabelle needs to stay in bed for 1 hour to let her head settle. After that, if she's feeling okay, you can arrange for her to be discharged at the reception desk downstairs. When the doctor departed, Isabelle turned to Laheeti and said, Am I hallucinating or was I just talking to a Yeti? Laheeti laughed. You're not hallucinating, he replied, and the Yeti actually spoke to me, Isabelle continued. I wasn't imagining that either. Spoke to you and gave you an injection in your arm while you were asleep, said Laheeti. We woke up yesterday, but for some reason the drugs they gave you didn't wear off so fast. The doctor said he gave you something to wake you up. Isabelle marveled at their attitudes. You're not weirded out by this, she queried. We've had a day to get used to it, Laheeti explained. Don't worry, when I woke up yesterday and saw a Yeti, my eyes almost popped out of my head, Twigger agreed. Isabelle asked about Burnmaster and Nikki, and Laheeti confirmed that they were okay. Then she turned to Pemba and smiled smugly. So I guess you feel pretty silly now, huh? She smirked. The whole time you were so sure that the Yeti were just a myth. I hate to say I told you so, but it was Pemba's turn to smile. Actually, I have a little confession to make, he said conspiratorially. Isabelle was happy to play along with his game. Oh, and what's that? She asked lightly. Wait, don't tell me, you secretly believed in the Yeti all along, right? No, I secretly lived with them all along, Pemba stated flatly. The smile dropped off Isabelle's face. What? I live here at Shangri-La, he replied in a matter-of-fact tone. I've lived here most of my life. The Yetis saved my father many years ago and invited him to live here. He brought me with him. I learned how to speak the Yetis' language before I learned how to speak English or Nepali. Isabelle gave the Nepalese teenager a hard stare. When I met you on the bus, you said you came from Shabrubesi, she said in a brittle voice. Pemba looked a bit uncomfortable. That was true, sort of, he replied. I did come from Shabrubesi a long time ago, and you said you went to an exclusive school in Nepal, she continued. That's right. And Shangri-La's school is about as exclusive as it gets, Pemba confirmed. You also said that you didn't believe in Yeti and that we were wasting our time looking for them, Isabelle snapped. Pemba made a guilty face. Okay, I might have lied about that a little bit, he confessed. I knew something about you didn't add up when I met you, Isabelle exclaimed. The whole time you knew and you never said anything. Pemba held up his hands in mock submission. Believe me, I wanted to tell you, he said. You were so determined to find a Yeti, but my job was to keep you all safe in Nepal and protect the Yeti secret. Your job, Isabelle repeated. You mean you didn't just meet us by chance on the bus to Shabrubesi, you were spying on us? Pemba winced. It's not as bad as it sounds, he replied quickly. I was protecting you as much as anything else. And a good thing too, because if not for me being there, you'd all still be stuck in that crevasse on Yala Peak, waiting to freeze to death. Isabelle snorted derisively. If that makes you feel better about being a dirty rat spy the whole time, she muttered. Laheeti rolled his eyes. Don't worry, she'll get over it soon. She's very sensitive, he said. Isabelle's eyes blazed. Whatever, she snapped. Turning to Pemba, she said, Just tell me one thing, Pemba. What really happened with Nikki Zipster on Yala Peak? Pemba considered his response. You really want to know? He asked. Yes, she exclaimed. My friend Abby, she's a Yeti, by the way, spent an afternoon searching far and wide on Yala, Pemba said. She eventually found Nikki in the crevasse, pulled her out, and carried her up the mountain. As you know, I took Nikki to Burnmaster and claimed to have found her on the glacier. We had to do it that way. Nikki was close to death, and we needed Burnmaster's medical skills. Isabelle thought about it. So Abby, who's a Yeti, was on Yala Peak with us. Pemba had to admit he was enjoying this. He replied, keeping an eye on us in case we got into any trouble. So we had a Yeti following us round the whole time? Isabelle asked, disbelieving. Pemba nodded. Two, actually, he said. Zaw was with Abby, so we were looking for Yeti, never knowing that two of them were following us everywhere, Isabelle asked. Pemba chuckled. Yeah, there was a nice irony about it, he admitted. And you would have let us leave Nepal without ever telling us the truth? Isabelle pressed. Pemba's smile faded. Don't take it personally, he replied, a little defensive. Anyway, you're here now and you know, so all that is past history, right? Isabelle narrowed her eyes. Maybe, she muttered. Let me know when you're ready to forgive me, replied Pemba, moving toward the curtain. In the meantime, you can stay here and get some more rest. Isabelle sat up straighter. Hold on, wherever you're going, I'm going with you, she declared. I don't think so, Pemba replied, shaking his head. Aside from the fact that the doctor said you need to stay here for an hour, you don't trust me, so why would you want to follow me? Isabelle rolled her eyes. All right, I forgive you for lying about the yeti, she exclaimed. I don't blame you for doing it, and I still think you're a good person. Happy now, so go and find my clothes so I can get out of here. Pemba scratched the back of his head. And the doctor's instructions to stay in bed, he asked. Look, I came to Nepal to find a yeti, and now I'm in Yeti Central, Isabelle replied. I'm not sleeping a moment longer, I want to see it all. And if I remember correctly, the doctor said you're going to show it to me. So lead the way and try not to leave out any interesting bits this time, huh? Pemba returned a few minutes later with Isabelle's clothes and hiking boots, and the three boys left her alone to get dressed. When she stepped out from behind the white curtain, she zipped up her jacket and declared she was ready to go. You can leave the jacket here, you're not going to need it, Laheeti said. Are you kidding? She retorted. We're in the middle of the Himalayas, you and Twig will freeze to death in those t-shirts you're wearing. Laheeti opened his mouth to answer, but then just shrugged. Pemba knew where he was going, and Isabelle was content just to look around and follow. As she moved through the corridors, she saw yeti doctors, nurses, patients, and visitors, all busy doing whatever it was that they did at the hospital. Isabelle tried not to stare. Pemba turned left and they walked past a nursery, where Isabelle saw several newborn yetis lying in bassinets. She watched as a nurse gently picked up one crying baby, and then the image was gone as she continued down the corridor. It's normal but completely weird at the same time, right? Said Twig. She nodded. I still feel like I'm completely weirded out, she replied. Have you been outside yet? Yeah, it's like some kind of Garden of Eden, Twig said. Hard to believe this place is still a secret, Isabelle mused. She glanced back at the empty corridor behind them, then said, Strange that nobody is keeping an eye on us. I figured we'd be guarded 24 hours a day. Pemba overheard the conversation. Guarded? He asked. Why would the yetis guard you? So they know where we go and to make sure we don't escape, she replied. How can you escape? Pemba asked. You were asleep when the rescue team brought you here, so you don't know how to get out of Shangri-La. That put a new slant on things. Isabelle's eyebrows shot up in surprise. So you mean we're prisoners here? She queried. Pemba shook his head. Not at all, he laughed. When you want to go, just say so, and a rescue team will put you back on the mountainside. Isabelle mulled over his answer, then said, Aren't you worried that we'll tell the world about this place? Without any evidence, who would believe you? Pemba said with a shrug. I guess you might be able to sell your tale to one of those wacky newspapers that has articles about UFO abductions. But you know as well as I do that nobody takes that stuff seriously. Your story would simply become one of the many hoaxes out there about yetis. Isabelle crossed her arms. You sound pretty confident that the yetis will never be discovered, she said. Actually, we worry about it all the time, he conceded. But so far, no human that has been rescued by the yetis has returned home and spilled the beans on Shangri-La. Isabelle frowned. Why is that? She asked. We save their lives, and all we ask in return is that they take our secret to the grave, Pemba said. It's a pretty good deal. Isabelle nodded and then said quietly, but you can't trust everybody. No, you can't, Pemba agreed. That's why we do other things to help guarantee that Shangri-La remains hidden from the world. Isabelle started to ask what Pemba meant by that, but the Nepalese boy wouldn't be drawn on the issue. Instead, he pointed to a doorway down the corridor and said, That is Burnmaster's and Nikki's room. I thought you might like to see them before we go any further. They walked inside. Burnmaster and Nikki were lying in separate beds, their heads elevated by pillows, some of their limbs immobilized in plaster casts. One of Nikki's legs was suspended above the bed by a complicated array of steel wires, and her neck was encased in a foam support. Burnmaster's forehead was wrapped in a bandage. Gulbenkian was sitting on a chair and talking to Burnmaster. Isabelle hugged the giant islander warmly. You look well enough to climb another mountain right now, she said. Maybe, stuttered Gull, but I don't want to. I've done enough mountain climbing to last me a lifetime. You're not the only one, Isabelle agreed. She turned to Burnmaster. On the other hand, you don't look well enough to climb a mountain, she said. He chuckled. I'll heal, he replied. I'm glad to see you're up and moving around. All thanks to you, Isabelle stated. I wouldn't have survived that jump into the crevasse without your help, and none of us would have survived the crevasse if you didn't make that call to Pemba's friend, Zaw, Burnmaster replied. So I figure we're even. Isabelle suddenly thought of the avalanche sweeping the Koreans off the mountain. I guess you don't know what happened to Mohawk and the others? She asked. Burnmaster's eyebrows rose a notch. You haven't heard? He asked. They're here in the hospital. Isabelle was shocked. They're in Shangri-La, she blurted out. I mean, they're okay. Well, they're alive, Burnmaster confirmed, but the doctors don't think they're going to make it. I'm told they are all in induced comas. I haven't been to see them yet, Isabelle shook her head. I can't believe they made it this far, she mused. Yeah, they're three tough fellas, Burnmaster said, then smiled. Have you been outside yet? She shook her head. Well, don't stand around here talking to me. I've got an excuse for not having been out yet, he laughed, indicating the plaster cast on his right leg. Come back and tell me what it's like. Isabelle promised to do so, turned to leave, and then paused. We were right about the yeti, weren't we? She said quietly. That they exist, I mean. We sure were, kiddo, Burnmaster replied with a wry grin, then added, but I still have no idea who sent me that letter in the first place. Gull said he would come with them. Pemba led the group through another series of corridors and stopped at the reception desk, where he arranged for Isabelle's discharge from the hospital. Then he pointed the way to a foyer with a large glass wall and a revolving door. Isabelle went through first and stepped out into a bright summer's day shining down on a boulevard in the middle of Shangri-La. She slowly turned her head, letting the experience soak in. Her first impression was of a city within a giant greenhouse. The rock ceiling high above was lined with hanging pot plants as far as the eye could see, overflowing with blooming flowers like countless frozen explosions of color in the sky. There were buildings on both sides, carved from the gigantic cave walls. A narrow garden ran down the middle of the boulevard, containing a row of slim green trees growing straight and tall, surrounded by flowers and shrubs. The artificial afternoon sun was supplied by fluorescent ultraviolet lights in the ceiling. The air was warm and humid and had the sweet scent of a forest. She looked up and down the boulevard, stunned to think that she was standing in the middle of a cave in the frozen Himalayas. The yetis had created a paradise in the most inhospitable place on Earth. Twig was right. Shangri-La was a Garden of Eden. It's beautiful, she breathed. So many flowers, the plants produce all the oxygen we need, explained Pemba. Shangri-La has an army of gardeners whose job it is to keep everything lush and green. Isabelle's gaze fell to the yetis walking around. There were dozens of them, walking to and fro, some alone and some in groups, chatting conversationally and going about their business. Others were seated on park benches, some reading, eating, talking to friends. Isabelle looked from group to group, studying them. They were all dressed in togas, favored by the citizens of ancient Rome and adopted by the citizens of Shangri-La. A single sheet of light, airy fabric draped around the body in a variety of styles. A modest attire covering their bodies from shoulder to knee. Some decorated their ankles with thin golden anklets. Everybody's clawed feet were bare. Their togas were as wonderfully colorful as the flowers in the sky. Unlike the streets of the modern world, where the population dressed almost exclusively in drab fashions and black suits, the yetis' togas included wonderful blues, greens, and yellows. A sartorial rainbow, this was a society in a permanent renaissance, vibrant and alive with color and creativity. She looked around. It was quiet, with only the gentle sound of conversation and laughter in the air. She realized why. There are no cars here, she remarked. That's right, Pemba replied. Everybody walks in Shangri-La. Pemba invited the group to stroll down the boulevard. Isabelle took off her jacket. It's so warm, she said. I don't get it. We're in the middle of the Himalayas. Where does the heat come from? The area is volcanically active, Pemba explained. Far below us there's a lava flow that heats this mountain all year round. The same heat also fuels the turbines to produce electricity for the city. Twig was impressed. Using the heat of the earth to create electricity with no pollution, that's green energy, he said. Pemba nodded. The yetis were using green energy long before it occurred to the rest of the world to do it, he replied. Before I came to Nepal, I read on the internet that the Himalayas are not volcanically active, mused Isabelle. Pemba smiled and said, the internet also says that yetis don't exist, but we both know that's not entirely accurate, is it? Isabelle laughed. No, I guess not, she agreed. Two yetis emerged from the crowd ahead and walked toward Pemba. Isabelle noticed them staring at her and nervously watched them approach. She was now able to distinguish between male and female yetis, so she knew that the one wearing the royal blue toga was a boy, and the one wearing the canary yellow toga and the gold anklet was a girl. Pemba saw Zaw and Abby walking over. He smiled. Here are two yetis I want you all to meet, he said. The humans stood uncertainly as Pemba made the introductions. Isabelle, Laheeti, Twig and Gull shyly said hello, after which there was a long, uncomfortable silence. The islander boys shuffled their feet and tried not to stare at the yetis. Eventually Abby said, first time you've all seen a yeti, huh? Still getting used to it, I bet. Must feel pretty weird. She paused, not sure what to say. This is the first time we've had any teenagers in Shangri-La, she continued. Teenagers from other parts of the world, I mean. We never see teenagers from London or Vavu. The rescue teams always bring back adults, mostly men, so it's nice to, meet people who are the same age as us." Isabelle relaxed and smiled. "So you're 14 years old too?" she asked. "Yeah," Abby said. "When's your birthday?" Isabelle asked. "August," replied Abby. "What about you?" "July," Isabelle said. Abby smiled and said, "So you'll beat me to 15 by 1 month." The two girls laughed easily, and then Isabelle said, "I think your toga is really beautiful." "Thank you," Abby said, genuinely pleased. "If you want, I can get you one. They're perfect in Shangri-La because it's so hot here." "I'd love to wear one," Isabelle replied brightly. Zaw crossed his arms and muttered, "Ah, for crying out loud." The smile faded from Isabelle's face as she turned her attention to the yeti in the blue toga. Her earlier shyness evaporated in the volcanic warmth of the underground city. "Excuse me," she snapped. Zaw gazed at her contemptuously. "Two species come together for the first time, and this is what we talk about: birthdays and fashion." "I mean, can this conversation get any more boring?" Abby opened her mouth to reply, but Isabelle beat her to it. "It's called breaking the ice, bozo," she retorted. "And if you knew anything about it, you'd be part of the conversation instead of complaining about it." Zaw laughed and held up his furry hands in mock submission. "Whoa, stand back everybody, it's human but it still bites," he scoffed. Isabelle's eyes narrowed. "Wait a minute, I recognize your voice," she said. "You're the dweeb I spoke to on the sat phone when I was trapped in the crevasse on Yala." Zaw grinned. "That's right, I was wondering when you would get around to thanking me for that," he declared. He made an arrogant gesture of encouragement with his hands. "Go on, give it to me, I love praise." "Oh, do you?" Isabelle purred sarcastically. "Well, you're not going to get any from me, you almost got us all killed down there." Zaw frowned. "What?" he muttered. "I think you've got me confused with someone else. I saved your bald backside, honey." "Don't call me honey," Isabelle snapped. "The phone I called you on only had enough power for one call, and you wasted most of it arguing with me. Remember? "Newsflash, Goldilocks," Zaw retorted. "You're lucky I even answered that call. Half the time I don't even bother to answer when Pemba calls me, so you should be grateful that you spoke to me at all." Isabelle pointed her finger at him aggressively. "Listen to me, you missing link," she spat. "When somebody calls you and tells you their life is in grave danger, you do not waste their time asking stupid questions. That's just basic common sense. Or were you sick the day they taught that class at school?" Abby stepped between the yeti and the blonde-haired girl. "Hold up, you two," she said placatingly. "I think we've gotten off to a bad start. We're all on the same team, so let's play like that." Zaw apologized to Isabelle for calling her Goldilocks. Zaw stood there, arms crossed angrily, a dark expression on his face, and after a long pause mumbled, "All right, I apologize." Abby turned to Isabelle. "Zaw has the heart of an angel but a tongue of pure acid," she explained helpfully. "So sometimes you have to tune out from what he's saying and focus on his good deeds, which, in your case, are many. I don't know if Pemba has told you yet, but it was Zaw who saved you all from the thieves on your first night in Kathmandu." She watched the shocked looks on their faces and continued. "And it was Zaw who saved Isabelle from the wolf pack on the way to Yala Peak." Abby waited for this information to sink in. Isabelle looked at Zaw with new understanding. "So you were with us the whole time, protecting us?" she asked. Zaw, still sulking, shrugged. "Don't sugarcoat it," he muttered. "Stalking you is more like it." "But you saved us," Isabelle pressed. Zaw shrugged again. "Just keeping you out of trouble," he said. "It was my job, so don't start crying about it or anything." Pemba had called it his job to follow them, and now Zaw was saying something similar. Whatever it was, she wasn't being told the full story. She made a mental note to ask about it later. She extended her hand in friendship. "I apologize for calling you the missing link," she said. "That was cruel, I didn't mean it, and thank you for saving us. We owe you our lives." Zaw's body language abruptly changed. Grinning broadly, he shook her hand and then pulled her close and hugged her. With an expression halfway between surprise and shock, Isabelle found herself wrapping her arms around him in response. "Great," he declared, releasing her. "Everything's forgiven. Come on, I'll show you some cool stuff in Shangri-La. Take my advice and ditch Pemba, he's a terrible tour guide." With that, Zaw turned to go. "There is one other thing, Zaw," began Isabelle. "And what's that?" he asked, stopping. "When we were staying in Shabrubesi, somebody broke into our hotel rooms and stole our rucksacks," she said, watching the teenage yeti closely. The glass windows were cut from the outside and there were long claw marks on one of the beds. She looked at him carefully and asked, "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Zaw shook his head innocently. "Nope, don't know what you're talking about," he declared. Isabelle crossed her arms. "Really," she replied flatly. "Yup, you've got the wrong yeti," he said. You're sure about that?" she asked. Zaw took off without answering, waving them along after him.
That is the end of this chapter. To listen to the next chapter on YouTube or to purchase the digital ebook from Amazon, see the links in the description.